Faceoff. Excuse me, I just watched Mad Dog, Mike and the Mad Dog. That is 30 for 30. So that was my awful Chris Russo impersonation. I'm Jake Lapin along with Julian McKenzie. Julian, how's it going, buddy?
Going well, going well. I still have yet to watch that 30 for 30. There's a few 30 for 30s I need to catch up on, but if there's one I'm going to prioritize first, there's one 30 for 30 that is available in Canada tonight, the 30 for 30 on George Best, the Manchester United superstar that I'm going to start watching. So a couple 30 for 30s I got to stack up and watch, including the Mike and the Mad Dog one.
Yeah, that list will pile up on you if you don't stay on it.
Absolutely. What's your favorite 30 for 30?
Oh, that's a tough question because there's so many good ones and like they're all different. They have different vibes to them. But if I had to say one, I would say Requiem for the Big East might be my absolute favorite. But that might also be because we spent a year of our life in the most recent one, as a matter of fact, in Syracuse. But it's definitely up there.
True.
Regardless of
True. I want to say the OJ one's my favorite because of the amount of details they poured in. I mean, 5 different parts. But outside of that, in the non-5-part division, I will go and say Rand University, the in-depth one that Bomani Jones was an executive producer for, which focused on Randy Moss's time rising up through the ranks. First off, trying to get at Western Virginia, then getting obviously some off the field troubles there, resurfacing at Marshall, and obviously becoming the badass receiver that he's become. He's the greatest receiver as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, that's my favorite 30 for 30, the Rand University one.
Interesting choice. And before we really get going here, you have some career updates for us, Julian. We'd love to hear about them.
Yeah. So as of today, I have become a contributor for the Hockey Writers blog. Basically, I'll be writing up some hockey. We have a new American Hockey League team up in Laval, which is a few minutes away from Montreal. They're going to be affiliated with the Montreal Canadiens, so you can come check out my page at the Hockey Writers, or check me out on Twitter, JKA McKenzie, for all of my stuff on the Laval Rocket, the new AHL team affiliated with the Montreal Canadiens.
Very exciting stuff. You'll be writing about hockey. I'll be working for the NHL Network come this winter. We might actually talk about some hockey on a show called The Faceoff.
Can we actually do that, please? Because it's been kind of weird not talking hockey for the longest while. I want to see how this goes in February when the Olympics happen, and then there's going to be hockey, but no NHL players. That is going to be interesting, whether that makes our lineup or not.
That should be interesting, but I don't think we're going to get into a lot of hockey today anyway.
No.
Down the line, we'll get there for sure. And Julian, starting with today, it's just really unfair that we put out this new episode. We talk all about this NBA ongoing drama, and then a day later, Julian, 1 day later, Kyrie Irving just drops a bomb on what has been an absolutely chaotic summer.
Kyrie Irving wanting out of Cleveland. And I know some people are saying, hey, he's under contract for a little while. He doesn't necessarily – the Cleveland Cavaliers don't necessarily have to trade him. And now there's pretty much playing, deny. Sure, we expect Kyrie at training camp this year. I mean, that's what Dan Gilbert's been saying on the record today. This just comes out of left field. I mean, it's kind of weird for me to think that, Kyrie Irving wants to be the man so bad now that he's willing to leave a situation where Cleveland is virtually the team that's going to come out of the Eastern Conference and represent the conference in the NBA Finals year in, year out. I don't think if he goes to any of these teams he wants to go to, he'll get that same opportunity. But you know what? He'll get to be the man, which I guess he really coveted. And I'll give it up to Brian Windhorst, who brought up this interesting point, right after the news broke. When Kyrie Irving signed that deal, that contract of his a few years ago, he signed it with the thinking that, I'm going to be the man. This is going to be my team. And then all of a sudden, LeBron James returns and he's had to adapt and be this Robin when he probably felt, he should have been the Batman. Then you have all these rumblings that Kobe Bryant's been talking to him. Maybe not. Who knows? People think, he looks up to Kobe Bryant. He has that Mamba mentality. Maybe that's a big reason why this is happening. Who knows? But Kyrie Irving wanting out, definitely out of left field. I just really don't know why. And I don't know if you hear all these reports about Stephen A. Smith saying that, LeBron is tempted to beat Kyrie's ass over this report and all that. Like, this is unfolding right before our eyes, this Cleveland Cavaliers squad. And I think if Kyrie leaves, this is all but going to entice LeBron to leave. This is just one big domino that if that falls, that's just going to set off a whole chain effect.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about it being out of left field. I don't think anybody really truly saw this coming. And what Damian Lillard was saying is, why wouldn't you want to be in the finals every single year? Why wouldn't you want to be alongside LeBron James, who could go down when it's all said and done as the greatest player of all time in the history of basketball? There's a lot of different angles to assess here. And the press conference today when Cleveland announced the new GM was all sorts of interesting, to say the least. I'm with you, Julian. I could not think of a very legitimate reason for Kyrie Irving to want to leave Cleveland. Like, why do you think if you're in Kyrie's shoes here, why would you want out of that situation where you're almost guaranteed to make the finals every single year?
I'm still confused. I mean, maybe if he didn't have a ring, maybe this is understandable, but this is all happening right after a year where they lose. I mean, imagine if Cleveland had won back-to-back, as I had predicted would happen. Of course, I failed at that. Imagine if they had won back-to-back. This isn't happening. Kyrie Irving is going to just, chill and be in Cleveland, but all of a sudden he wants to be the man. And look at those teams that he had mentioned. We'll list off the four big ones that were mentioned. Miami, San Antonio was one, Minnesota was one, and I'm completely blanking on the fourth one, which is terrible. But I mean, the New York Knicks.
Kyrie, don't do it, buddy.
Don't do it. Don't do it. It's kind of crazy. Like San Antonio, Matt, he wants to be the man in San Antonio. This is a team that has Kawhi Leonard now. They've had Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker. They've had all these superstar guys, but even Kawhi Leonard now, who's more or less the biggest star on that team, yes, he with his play stands out, but in terms of ego and him saying, you know what, I'm going to be the man, he doesn't stand out that way. It seems that the San Antonio Spurs, they kind of have this whole, lead by example, team by committee kind of deal. Everyone is, there's no one true superstar. Everyone tries to play like a team. So it's kind of weird that Kyrie would want to be the man in San Antonio. Miami, I personally saw as a fit before those teams were officially announced. But, I don't think Miami's going to get him any closer to an NBA championship. It would be hilarious if he went there because of, the ties to LeBron and all that. But that's not getting him to a championship. The New York Knicks, do I even have to explain this one? Like, I'm not touching that organization with a 10-foot pole. I'm sorry. I don't care if Kristaps Porzingis is in your front court. Don't go to New York. I don't care if it's a big market. Don't do this to yourself. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it, Kyrie. Kyrie, don't do this.
Yeah, the question really is here, does he want to be the man to lead a team, or does he want to compete for a championship? Because I'm telling you right now, it cannot be both. And I'm not only saying that because the Warriors as a super team exist. I'm telling you that Kyrie Irving, as talented as he is not leading a team as the number one option to an NBA championship, particularly in today's landscape. It's just not happening. Look, Kyrie, I've always said this about Kyrie. He's probably a top 5-10 basketball player on planet Earth. Top 10 guy to just pick out of a crowd in a pickup game and have him go wild and do all these crazy finishes, drain crazy threes, do crazy hesitation dribbles. He can do all of that. But
Uncle Drew.
What?
Uncle Drew.
He's
Uncle Drew. On some Uncle Drew tip, like the commercials.
Exactly. He's a top 10 basketball player in the world, but I don't think he's a top 10 NBA player in the world. And the important distinction here is we're talking not just 5-on-5, but systematic breakdowns of teams where matchups and adjustments are made constantly. Coaches are reviewing game film. Kyrie has a flair for the dramatic, and he's an improvisational artist, and he has crazy handles. But he's not on the same level as some guys like a Chris Paul or a LeBron James who are thinking so far ahead and are 3 moves ahead in every single action that they do on both ends of the floor. Kyrie also not a very good defender, but I'm not even talking about that end of the floor right now. I'm just saying in terms of NBA basketball to what it's become, Kyrie's just not quite there. Now, he's still arguably probably a top 20 player, easily a top 30 player, I'd say. But I don't think he, as the number one piece, could even come close to a championship. Not just fall short like his teammate LeBron has a number of times. I'm telling you, he wouldn't even be in the discussion of getting to the finals if he were to lead a team. Now, of the 4 teams that he mentioned, it gets more interesting there. San Antonio, there's 2 ways to look at it. One way is, wow, if Kyrie could just go under Pop's wing, start putting in the effort to defend, because I think he could be a solid defender if he put forth far more effort there. I think defense's effort is half the battle in that situation. Plus, if he was willing to give up the ball a little more, really fit into that system, then we could talk. But I don't think that's what Kyrie's looking for. Even though he said the Spurs were on his short list, at the same time, I don't think he's truly thought it through that that's not his team. It's, first of all, he's not as good as Leonard, but second of all, that's Greg Popovich's team. You do what he says. That's why. Do you think Tony Parker is nearly as good as Kyrie Irving in pickup? Hell no.
Nope.
But in terms of a fit, even Patty Mills, in terms of fit in that system, listening to Popovich, those guys will fare far better than Kyrie would unless he was willing to make major changes to his game, which, considering he's doing something so selfish and not willing to compromise as much as he has so far, I just don't see that happening. New York would be a disaster. We don't even need to discuss it. The Knicks are an embarrassment to the National Basketball Association, and there's nothing else that needs to be said there. Miami, of course, like you said, just the crazy juxtaposition that's where LeBron went. That's just a head scratcher, really, more than anything. It could be a fun team. I don't see them competing, like you said, for a championship. The one that really gets me interested is Minnesota, and I've been high on Minnesota for a while now as a promising team out west. But I don't see how they could even make it work. They just spent $60 million on Jeff Teague to be their starting point guard. So I don't know. I don't know if they would be able to make something work. That would intrigue me, but again, I mean, this could refute literally any argument in the NBA today. But the word Warriors, that's good enough to refute the Rockets bringing in Chris Paul and potentially Carmelo Anthony. Then it's definitely good enough to refute Minnesota bringing in Kyrie Irving to what they've got going on there.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just going to say that Kyrie's best move at this point is pretty much just to stick it out up in Cleveland, at least for one more year. And then maybe after that, you revisit your options once LeBron either leaves or, see if he ends up sticking around.
So that's the thing. Is Kyrie being selfish here, or is he being preemptive? Does he know something we don't? Or does he have a hunch that LeBron James, who's a free agent at the end of this season, may decide, you know what? Cleveland's not getting it done anymore. We had a great run. We got our ring. I delivered. I got Cleveland that championship like I promised I would ever since I was the chosen one back in high school. But now my legacy's at stake. Becoming the best player of all time is at stake, and I can't win any more rings here. I need to leave. That's a major possibility. It gets talked about all the time in the news cycle today, and the season is like not even close to starting. So with all those rumors going around, and LeBron even saying, look, I'm disappointed in our offseason, then I would completely understand Kyrie Irving being, wow, you know what? I'm not going to sit here and let him abandon us. I want to get out of here and get started on something else instead of staying on this sinking ship. I think that makes sense.
He's just not going to be any closer to a championship if he just leaves, though. I'm telling you, LeBron, that ship he has in Cleveland is as good as it's going to get. But, like I said, Cleveland's in a position where they don't necessarily have to deal away Kyrie. And there's been so many instances in the past before we've heard all these star players, say, hey, you know what, I want out. Kobe Bryant, funny enough, has done that before where he's like, hey, you know what, I want out of LA. He ended up sticking around, and we all know how the end of that story went. So this could all just be smoke just being blown for nothing, and Kyrie Irving could be suiting up at training camp as a member of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Or he could be gone. I mean, this offseason crazy enough as it is.
Come opening night, do you think Kyrie Irving is a Cleveland Cavalier?
I think he is. I don't see a move that works out for Cleveland to make this happen. I also think that maybe behind the scenes, LeBron is just going to take Kyrie aside, just clear all the BS that's out there and say, hey, you know what? Let's just stick this out for one more year and try to figure this out. and then after that, we'll try to decide our futures from there. I just don't see Cleveland making this move with Kyrie Irving now.
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt in terms of they just got a brand new GM who basically avoided that question as much as possible today. But how can you have this hanging over your head the entire season, getting into, like, no, we're not even talking about preseason or training camp, the actual season starting? How can you have just that elephant in the room? How does that not affect a locker room when you know this guy wants to get out because some other guy might also want to get out? I don't understand how you don't address that issue as soon as possible. Of course, once the right move is found. I think they get something done before the year starts, Julian.
Hey, you know what? That could totally happen as well. And you know what? Derrick Rose could be the guy to just step in and just take over for Kyrie Irving. As hilarious as not hilarious, but Derrick Rose, the fact that they were able to get him in the last few days, or official or not, it seems as if he's going to be that guy. I mean, it seems as if like the Cleveland has some kind of contingency plan in place in the event that Kyrie Irving is not going to be the guy heading into the year. I mean, they have a ton of guards already at that spot, but if Derrick Rose is going to be that guy taking over for Kyrie Irving, that's going to be very interesting to see. I mean, I have all these assortment of MVPs. There's like some stat going on. The last few MVPs are either on the Warriors or the Cleveland Cavaliers, which I think is amazing to see. But Derrick Rose as a replacement for Kyrie Irving, if he's healthy, maybe. If he's healthy, we can't count on that.
Are you legitimately suggesting that Derrick Rose could be a fitting replacement for Kyrie Irving?
He can't. He can't. Unfortunately, he can't, because of the fact that we haven't seen him play a full season in a while. And even if he does play a full season, he is nowhere near the player he once was. That being said, that might be as best as Cleveland can do right now in terms of finding a suitable replacement for Kyrie Irving.
LeBron
can do.
LeBron complaining about the offseason before this Derrick Rose signing. And I know it's 1 year and no money, but for God's sakes, he was 51st in efficiency last year among point guards, Julian. Point guards. Oh, man.
He also had his best year in a while, averaging 18.
But
if that's any positive.
Efficient. It's the fact that he got an MVP in 2011 is just so telling that how much the game has changed, because he is not efficient at all. He's a terrible shooter, both volume and from outside, catch and shoot, spot up, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is. He's not a good shooter, not to mention the injury implications. I mean, this guy cannot stay healthy if his life depended on it. Throughout his career, especially now as he's getting older, he's not replacing Kyrie Irving. I don't even think he's a legitimate backup. I think LeBron is just absolutely right. I know he might have courted Derrick Rose, but God, this offseason has just gone so poorly for Cleveland, even without any of this Kyrie nonsense. And now it's just an absolute ticking time bomb, if you ask me.
All the more reason for Cleveland to keep Kyrie Irving. At this point, I really don't think dealing away Kyrie Irving is going to solve any of their issues. At least if you keep him around, some stability is there, and you save the rock slide, which has been your offseason, from culminating into a complete disaster zone. So Cleveland, not that you're listening to me right now, but keep Kyrie Irving. It's in your best interest.
Hypothetically, if they were to make a move, what would you deem a fair return for Kyrie? Just of teams that have been or would potentially be interested, what would you deem acceptable to say, okay, we're getting rid of Kyrie Irving, this is what we're going to bring back for Cleveland? What would you be looking for?
You're trying, if I'm putting on my general manager hat right now for a guy like Kyrie Irving, who, some people might argue could be a top 5 point guard at his position, argued, not necessarily in that top 5, argued. You got to get a glut of roster players coming your way. I'm not saying you need to do like a Vince Carter trade where you get like 12, but I think you're getting, a roster player, a solid roster player, maybe someone who could play at the 3, or you get some kind of suitable replacement at the point guard position. Maybe you need another team involved. I've seen a lot of the trade machine kind of get bust out in the last few days, and we've seen we've seen 3-team trades try to happen in order to make this Kyrie Irving trade happen. Maybe you get another trade and another team involved, but you need at least a suitable replacement at the point guard position and another roster player at the very least if you want to make this Kyrie Irving trade happen.
Yeah, I saw something suggesting Eric Bledsoe and Josh Jackson of Phoenix in return for Kyrie, which I thought was an intriguing move for both teams, as a matter of fact. But Phoenix has said they're not getting rid of Jackson in any trade scenario, which I respect because you just invested your 4th overall pick in him. Very understandable. Do you think there's any possible Melo deals in play here?
I mean, if the Knicks thing happens, perhaps. But, I mean, that would be interesting enough to see, right? Because it seems as if Melo has been trying to get himself to Houston. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think he'd necessarily complain about him going to Cleveland. I'm not sure what Melo and another roster player, kind of the similar deal. You need a guard in that instance, but what guard is New York going to be able to offer up to? Derrick Rose has already signed from New York to Cleveland. What other guard is New York going to offer up to make this a completely fair exchange?
Yeah, they can't trade Tim Hardaway Jr. just yet, and his $71 million. Not that I don't think Cleveland want that. I don't even think Cleveland would want Carmelo Anthony as the main piece in a Kyrie Irving trade. I think that's a significant downgrade.
Well, they're not going to give up Kristaps.
Okay. Yeah, sure, but I don't think the Knicks are that stupid. I know they're stupid, but I don't think they're that stupid.
What if Minnesota, one thing I've seen, what about Andrew Wiggins and Jeff Teague? I know Jeff Teague just signed, and obviously Wiggins is making money as well, but that would also be hilarious as well. Andrew Wiggins was cleared out of Cleveland in order to accommodate Kevin Love, pretty much at the request of LeBron, who left out Andrew Wiggins in his letter when his return to Cleveland. That would be hilarious as well. You get Andrew Wiggins back, who was exiled as a result of LeBron coming back. So Wiggins, Teague for Kyrie Irving. What about that move?
It's certainly intriguing. I think the reason they shipped off Wiggins for Love, A, is to compete now, obviously, with B, because Wiggins and LeBron James play the same position. Now, if LeBron were to take him under his wing for this 1 year and then leave, I guess that would make sense for the future if they legitimately thought LeBron was leaving, which also goes against every single thing they said today in their press conference, that he's committed to the city and whatnot. It's Wiggins for Kyrie plus Jeff Teague. I would deem that a good return for Kyrie Irving, a guy like Andrew Wiggins who is yet to reach his full potential, who had the most hype surrounding him as #1 pick, arguably since Wilt Chamberlain. I mean, the guy was a stud coming out of high school. Do you think that team, hypothetically, not that it would happen, but do you think, let's just say any of these trades we brought up, if they ship off Kyrie Irving and bring back Wiggins or Bledsoe or Carmelo Anthony, does Cleveland still make the finals, do you think?
I think so, because, well, maybe Boston I still think might be their closest challenger, but I don't think anyone else in the Eastern Conference has improved themselves to the point where they could match up and defeat the Cleveland Cavaliers, even with all of the turmoil that's happened all this offseason. That's hilarious to think. With everything that's happened with Cleveland this offseason, you put them in a 7-game series against a Milwaukee, a Toronto, a Washington, a Boston even. We're going to pick Cleveland. Cleveland is still good enough to reach the NBA Finals. And, I mean, I think in that particular instance where if they get Andrew Wiggins and Jeff Teague back, losing Kyrie might be, a significant dent, and maybe it brings Cleveland down. I'm still taking Cleveland to go to the NBA Finals because LeBron James is still going to be that guy, still going to be that driving force that's going to take them there. I don't think it's going to – I think losing Kyrie, depending on the return, is going to make them a slightly lesser team, but I don't see them falling out of the NBA Finals entirely.
Yeah, it's really one of those things where, like, well, they still have LeBron.
They still have LeBron.
Not to mention, like you said, the East is not very deep this year, I think.
Especially now after with the exile of guys like Paul George. I mean, fine, you get Gordon Hayward coming over to the Eastern Conference, but I mean, in terms of all-stars.
No, that's on the Celtics, which was their, I guess, toughest challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
And look, it's like it's an even easier, more embarrassing cakewalk to the at least Eastern Conference Finals than it was this past year when they swept their way through. So they can honestly they could rest LeBron in the first round hypothetically and still be perfectly fine. Honestly, I think LeBron could average 15 minutes in the first round and they would be fine. They'd still win in 5 games maximum.
We'd complain about him resting in the first round, though. You know,
it's that weak out east right now. I don't think anyone's disputing that. I mean, name 8 good teams in the East. I don't think we have enough time on the show to think of 8 good teams on the East. I really don't.
Charlotte? Do they in that 8? No, I don't know. Are they going to be a 500 ball club this year? Probably, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
This 500 is the new 50 wins out east, huh?
It's that bad.
Yeah. All right. Any other notes or comments on this Kyrie Irving thing before we get into a little bit of baseball here?
Okay, look, Kyrie Irving, I still think if he leaves, it would just be a total shock to the system. But hey, look, let's discuss this giant conspiracy theory that I've kind of spun up here. Let's say Kobe Bryant spoke to Kyrie Irving. You know, Kyrie Irving looks up to Kobe Bryant, hashtag Mamba mentality. Kobe Bryant talking to Kyrie saying, hey, you know what? You got to be your own man. You got to go out there and, say, you know what? You got to take over a team. Kyrie says, you know what? I want this trade to happen. I want to get out of Cleveland. LeBron realizes, hey, you know what? Kyrie's gone. This ship's going to sink. LeBron's going to leave Cleveland. Think of a team that LeBron's been linked to, the Los Angeles Lakers. You know who played for the Los Angeles Lakers? Kobe Bryant. What if Kobe Bryant is laying the dominoes down for LeBron to come to LA in 2018? And that's my grand conspiracy theory of the week. Word to Matt D'Ambrosio.
There you go, kids. The conspiracy theory of the week from Julian McKenzie. We should turn that into a segment, I think.
Conspiracy theory. Kobe, yeah, I'm totally for that. Let's write it in the Google Doc. Let's get it in. Conspiracy theory of the week. Whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball, whether it's anything, whether it's like Jai or something, just come up with like a weird conspiracy theory.
I'm all for it. All right, let's get into some baseball here. A few moves since we last spoke. We went through a list of buyers and sellers last week, touched on a few trades, some of the big ones that had already happened, gave them grades, obviously. Today, we're going to keep it a little more simple. Nothing huge going on just yet. I think next week we'll have plenty more to talk about. But in the meantime, there's a few moves kind of defining some of those teams that we were debating whether they would be, in fact, buyers or sellers. So I want to start with the move that was made last night, and that is the Boston Red Sox trading with San Francisco, adding Eduardo Nunez. What are your thoughts on this move?
It seems like a guy who's going to just come and step in. He doesn't necessarily need to be the guy, like a utility player, if anything. That's what he was pretty much doing in San Francisco. I like the idea of having him on the team. I think he'll just provide, some added depth for them. The Red Sox, I think, as good as they are right now, they could be a force to be reckoned with in the playoffs. I like the move. I don't think they necessarily paid up that much to get it. Anything to add depth to their squad.
Yeah, kind of what I was saying last week is the Red Sox, their lineup is stacked from top to bottom except for third base. And what they did is they called up just yesterday, as a matter of fact, Rafael Devers, the 4th-ranked prospect in MLB right now. He actually had his first career hit, and it was a home run today.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they felt it necessary to bring in Nunez. And at first I was like, they just brought up this guy. Are they putting the pressure on him, giving up on him already? But I really thought about it for a second. And beyond that starting lineup that we love to talk about so much, the Red Sox bench is really weak. If they're giving anyone an off day, there's a very suboptimal bat in that lineup. So this guy gives them depth, and he can really kind of do it all. He can play multiple positions. He can steal bases. He gets on base. I think it's a good move. It's one of those overlooked moves that we happen to be talking about right now because it's like the only team that's made a move in the past couple of days. But it's like, look at the Astros. They have Marwin Gonzalez, who we also talked about last week. He's a guy who's playing shortstop every day now because Correa went down, but he's been playing left field. He's been playing third base, first base. He can do it all, and he's hitting over 300. He's just such a valuable guy. And I think you have the obvious no way you'd ever trade Jose Altuve, Carlos Correa, George Springer. But I think right after that, Marwin Gonzalez is untradeable. He is so valuable because he can play any position, bat anywhere in the lineup. He's a switch hitter too. And I think that Nunez is like a poor man's Marwin Gonzalez, and he's a great ad for a Red Sox team that's destined to make the playoffs, but they want to make noise because that's a franchise where making the playoffs doesn't cut it. That's not good enough. Not to mention, Julian, that the Yankees have caught up. They're one game back of Boston in the standings as of the end of today. Both teams won today. And one step further, the Yankees actually are up on them one game in the loss column. So I think Boston had to do something. I think they'll continue to do stuff as the week goes on, but they needed something, and that's a great move to add to their depth. I like that move a lot.
Absolutely.
Other moves since we last spoke, the Royals, who were a team on the fence there last week when we talked, they are officially a game and a half back of Cleveland. They've won 7 in a row, Julian. They actually own that second wild card spot as we speak by half a game over Tampa Bay. 4 walk-off wins, by the way, on this 7-game win streak, all at home, by the way, which I think is an interesting side note there. But they are, in fact, buyers. They've decided they're in. Making the move with San Diego, brought in 3 relievers, Trevor Cahill and Brandon Maurer among them. What do you think of this move and the fact that the Royals are deciding to go for it in general?
They have every right to go for it. They're only a game and a half behind Cleveland in that division, the AL Central, and they have that second wild card spot. Every reason for them to go out and make those moves, especially going up into their bullpen as well. The Royals are hot right now. 8 of their last 10. They've won 8 of their last 10. Every right to go forward in that Central. I know they have, the Twins they're below 500 now, but they're still kind of in the thick of things in that race. This could be a move that pretty much makes that AL Central mad competitive until the very last day. I have no problem with them making that move in their bullpen.
Yeah, what's funny is when Kansas City made those back-to-back World Series runs, their bullpen was their strength. Now, you look at them, and the lineup is still essentially the same as what it was from a couple years ago. The starting pitching is a lot less for sure, but they have a guy, Vargas, who was an all-star, who's having an outstanding season. Some thought he'd be a huge name on the trade block a few weeks ago, but now obviously not anymore with Kansas City playing a lot better. But the bullpen needs a little bit of help, and now you have plenty of it. So they didn't give up a ton either. I think, why not? If you're currently in a playoff spot, I think that's by all means an automatic, okay, you're a buyer. You know what I mean?
For sure. Absolutely. I think so.
There's 7 teams, 8 teams in the mix, like we said last week, but they are legitimately within a spot. So how could you possibly argue with them becoming buyers? I like it. They need to do more. They need another starter, but they definitely helped pad that bullpen. I think they've addressed the bullpen for now. They could still make another move, but I don't think it's necessary. They could bring in another bat. I don't think that's the worst idea, but they definitely need another starter. But the fact that they're buyers is perfectly fine with me. I'm on board with it.
One name to look out for in that department, Francisco Liriano. That's a name that's kind of bounced around with the Blue Jays right now. Hasn't had necessarily the greatest year. Well, 6-5 record. The ERA really ballooned up at 5.99. But I think that's a guy who, if you have him as a 4th starter or a 5th starter, he could do some wonders for a team. So Kansas City might be looking at Liriano ahead of the deadline. So keep an eye out on him.
Yeah, Bob Nightingale reported that Liriano is on Kansas City's radar. Thanks for pointing that out. That's not what I'm talking about. I don't know. Liriano's not having a very good year, and sure, that it's a name. I get it. He's a veteran. He's been in the playoffs before. He can give you innings, but that's not what I'm talking about. That doesn't excite me. That's not a move that puts you over the edge on the next level. Like, wow, these guys came to play. That doesn't excite me too much, Liriano. But it makes sense for the Blue Jays, I think, to get rid of Liriano, who's probably not really in your future plans. Meanwhile, another team coming from the AL Central, Julian, and that is the confounding team that I could not figure out last week. The Minnesota Twins have fallen into a skid. It can't be that surprising. I mean, like, the fact that they're within even close to 500 I think is more surprising than the fact that they've skidded the last week or so. Now 4.5 back of Cleveland, 3 behind Kansas City for that second wild card, and 1 game under 500 at 49-50. Yet they still pull the strings on a trade, bringing in Jaime Garcia from Atlanta. Is this a good or bad move for Minnesota?
Well, I mean, at this point, I mean, with the fact that they've been on this skid, depending on what happens, it might be for moot. I mean, John Morosi tweeting under an hour ago that the Twins, not only are they considering moving one of their stars, Irvin Santana, they might even move Garcia, if they realize, hey, you know what, we're not truly, contenders after all. They might end up selling. So, yeah, I'm as confused as you are. This is a team that seemed to have had a chance in the wild card race, and they've kind of stumbled back in the last few days. In principle, this should be a good move. He's a decent starter and should try to help out for that run. But if this skid continues, it might be for moot, and they might just end up dealing him away.
It's like you can't – the thing about this time of year is so tricky because you can't base your entire season off of a few days. Like, look, wow, we've lost 4 out of the last 5 days. Today's July 31st. That's it. We're done. They've done a lot of good things this year, Minnesota. But I don't know. I felt this whole time that they should have stood pat and just kind of see what they have. I don't think they're legitimately trying to win a championship this season anyway with that roster. And I don't know. I mean, Garcia's a good arm, I guess. It's just I wouldn't have given anything up in this year's race, especially now that they're skidding. I know hindsight's 2020. They didn't know this a few days ago. And this Garcia trade actually took a few days to go through. It was a done deal, and then they were backing off, and then they ended up going through with it anyway. But if I'm a Minnesota fan, I wouldn't expect anything else before July 31st, and I wouldn't expect a playoff appearance either. Not that they're not a fun, exciting team that's overachieving, because they are. It's just there's too many other teams in the mix right now. It's just not going to work out, and I would not have pegged the Twins as buyers coming into the season, definitely, and even as of last week. I just don't think it's the right move for them. I would not have done it if I were Minnesota. That's basically the biggest moves going on this week, a little quieter than we would have hoped. Hall of Fame weekend going on, not just the trade deadline this weekend. I'm pretty sure you'll be watching, won't you, Julian?
I will be watching because Tim Raines will be going into the Hall of Fame as a member of the Montreal Expos after all of the hard efforts from MLB reporter and Montrealer Jonah Carey. So I just would like to shout him out. Jonah Carey, your efforts did not go in vain. Tim Raines will be going into the Hall of Fame as a member of the Expos. I would also like to shout out the members of the Montreal Expos group, Expos Nation. I believe they're sending down 3 buses down to Cooperstown. Every year they do this where they arrange to get a couple guys together, basically a bunch of Expos fans, and a bunch of media members are also involved as well. They go all the way down to Cooperstown and they take in that weekend's Hall of Fame inductions. Like one year they had it when Pedro Martinez was inducted into the Hall of Fame. I saw a bunch of them party up with him during one of the nights during that weekend. They loved it, and obviously he had such great things to say about Montreal. Pedro has expressed his love and affirmation for Montreal for so many years. He spent a few years in the 90s there. Even when he won the World Series in 2004 with Boston, he dedicated his ring to the city of Montreal. But this year they get to see one of their own, Tim Raines, a guy who, he didn't have 3,000 hits, but he was pretty damn close. Also, reaching base almost 4,000 times in his career, done so more than Tony Gwynn, Lou Brock, Roberto Clemente, Mike Schmidt, Roberto Alomar, Eddie Matthews, Brooks Robinson, and Harmon Killebrew, bunch of MLB legends. Tim Raines deserves to be in that Hall of Fame, and after all of the the years on the ballot and people doing everything Jonah Carey pretty much hauling ass and getting voters to vote for him, Tim Raines gets his rightful place in the Hall of Fame. So I will definitely find a way to watch and at least, follow this coming weekend's festivities.
Yeah, Julian, as two of the least fortunate baseball franchises that you and I happen to be fans of, the Expos, now the Nationals, and the Houston Astros, it's interesting that in 2 of the past 3 seasons, we've each had a player enshrined into the Hall of Fame to get to watch.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah. So we're getting a little spoiled over here. As Jeff Bagwell this year, Tim Raines this year from the Expos, and a couple years ago, Pedro Martinez, like you said, and Craig Biggio. We got into this on one of the earlier episodes of the Faceoff. As a matter of fact, when the Hall of Fame vote was going down, we broke it down, and we both vouched for our guys who did both end up getting in. So we were right. Congratulations to us. Yeah, both very deserving, as well as, Pudge. If steroids aside, the guy is an obvious no-doubter. He claims he never took steroids, and I guess we're inclined to agree with him. We'd have to give him the benefit of the doubt, even though in that Texas locker room where a lot of guys were busted, there's definitely raised some question marks. Bagwell, too, the reason he hasn't gotten in until now, I think, given his stats are clearly Hall of Fame worthy, is the steroids question. Tim Raines, though, not really in that discussion, don't you think?
No, as far as I know, he's never been connected to any sort of that steroids thing. And this is a guy who, I guess was more under the radar, not nearly as flashy as a guy like Jeff Bagwell, even Pudge Rodriguez. Vladimir Guerrero was more of a flashy guy. He didn't even make it this year. Next year, I think he's definitely going to be in. But no, this was a guy who wasn't necessarily connected with all that steroid stuff, but just wasn't as high profile of a guy to just get in. He was probably just that guy on the ballot who you look at, you think, hey, you know what? He kind of makes a case, but this guy looks better than him. This guy looks better than him. And in his very last year of eligibility, the voters had sense enough to say, you know what? This is his time. Get him into the Hall of Fame this year. So, yeah, no connections in terms of, the funky stuff up in baseball with Tim Raines.
Yeah, you mentioned Vlad Guerrero. This is this version of way too soon to look into next year. Guerrero's definitely at or near the top of potential guys to get in next year's class. Is there anyone else out there that you particularly like?
Well, this is a person who I guess a lot of people may debate upon because of the fact that, he pretty much comes in for one inning. But Trevor Hoffman, he'll be in his 3rd year on the ballot. That's a guy who will get some looks. What about any of the steroid guys? Your Roger Clemens and your Barry Bonds. They finished 7th and 8th on the ballot. One other guy that I wonder if Montreal Expos fans are going to look to try to amp up his case. Larry Walker also there. And a whole bunch of other first-year guys like a Jorge Posada, Tim Wakefield, the knuckleballer, another great guy. There's a few other players I can think of who, may have a chance at next year. But one guy I'm going to push for next year, not that I have a ballot or anything, one guy who I really want in, Vladimir Guerrero. And the debate's going to rage on about which team he's going to go for. As an Expo, where he saw a lot of great years, an outstanding player who could hit anything, or the Angels, the Anaheim Angels. That was another team he played for, and he did some wonders with them as well. That's going to be a very interesting debate for next year.
Yeah, Guerrero could be one of those guys who goes on with the blank MLB cap, because that's a tough decision there. 71.7% of the vote last year. I like Guerrero getting in for sure. Hoffman missed it by a few votes. He was at 74%. He's a shoo-in this year. The next one up, I think the top 8 guys from last year who didn't get in are right there, in my opinion. You got Edgar Martinez, who I think when we did the face-off last time, look, I get it. He's only a DH. He didn't play the field, and I think that hurts him. He was at 58.6% last year. That was his 9th year on the ballot. 8th. This upcoming one will be his 9th. So that is a little bit of a head-scratcher. We'll see if he gets any serious momentum towards the 70s this year. After that, Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds, two guys, both in the mid-50s, but will they get to 75? I'm not sure they ever will. I think their reputations are too tarnished at this point. Moving on.
Deal or no deal time?
I just want to get through a few more names real quick. Mike was at 51.8%. He was the other guy above 50% last year. It could go either way because he's one of those guys who has near Hall of Fame numbers, like very, very, very good, if not great. But he did it in the era facing guys like Barry Bonds or all these other guys' names on the list that are not getting in because they took steroids. And he did it in the same era. I think that deserves a little bit of recognition. After him, you have Kurt Schilling and then Manny Ramirez, who in his first year of the ballot only got 23.8%. But I expect that to jump because a lot of voters, I think, are first-year sticklers, not having it for the first year. But in the second year, it's interesting to watch how much they'll jump on those ballots. And then some intriguing first years, just real quick. You got Jim Thome, who I think will get plenty of votes. 600 home runs. I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Chipper Jones, one of the greatest switch hitters of all time, made the playoffs almost every year with Atlanta, as did Andrew Jones, who's coming up on the ballot. Scott Rowland, an interesting guy. I don't take him too seriously. Then you have Johan Santana, Johnny Damon, and the list kind of decreases from there. Some interesting guys. I don't think some serious first-year contenders, other than Thome, depending on people's skepticism of his steroid usage, which I guess would make sense. But based purely on numbers, he's a no-doubter, so it'll be interesting to see next year. But again, that's not anytime soon. It's just because it's coming up this weekend. We thought we'd take a look. But it is time to move on, Julian, to our favorite game, America's favorite game. Big deal or no deal. And the first thing I want to bring out is kind of what we were touching on earlier. Is Eric Bledsoe's name's coming up in Kyrie Irving trade scenarios. Well, apparently today in LA, LeBron and Derrick Rose were working out with guess who? Eric Bledsoe. Is this a big deal or no deal?
Considering that Eric Bledsoe has been linked in, this whole Kyrie Irving thing, this has to be a big deal. This is one of those, when there's smoke, there may be fire. And if LeBron and co are so ready to move on that they're looking to get Derrick Rose as a guy, I have to believe something has to be up if they're willing to say, you know what, let's train with Eric Bledsoe and kind of give him a taste of what we're going to be cooking up for next year. Not to say that, the Eric Bledsoe thing could happen. It could easily just be, smoke and mirrors, but this has to be a big deal. There's alarm bells going off in my head at them working out. It's a workout, but with a guy who's possibly linked with coming the other way if you trade away arguably your second best player, I don't know. It sounds like a big deal to me.
It would make a lot of sense for Phoenix to move on. I know Brandon Knight just tore his ACL. He could be out for the entire season. Mm-hmm. Bledsoe was saying the other day he loves Phoenix, but he wants to win. I think Bledsoe is a perfect trade candidate for Phoenix. That being said, I think NBA players work out with each other all the time. I know there have been rumors, but I don't think those players deciding to work out necessarily means anything quite yet. It's certainly something to keep an eye on, but I'm not calling it a big deal as of right now, July 26th on this episode.
Okay. Just be careful about that Phoenix to Cleveland trade if it so happens. Don't say I didn't warn you.
We'll keep our eyes open for sure. All right, how about this? Lucky Whitehead, not so lucky as I've read on Twitter about a billion times. He allegedly stole a Twinkie, and the Cowboys released him. Then Whitehead comes out and says, I didn't steal that Twinkie. As a matter of fact, I wasn't even in the state when that happened. But the Cowboys stand by it. They released him, and he was picked up by your team, Julian, the Jets, today. How do you feel about all this? Lot to process here.
This is a big deal because this is just really fishy. The fact that the Dallas Cowboys would be so quick to cut a guy. I mean, let's take out the fact that, he was a fringe player. Let's just remove that from the equation. The fact that they were so quick to remove a guy just at the hint of trouble when they don't even realize, what exactly is going on with the guy. And now the Cowboys look as if they have egg on their face for cutting a guy who was nowhere near this particular incident. and you have Jason Garrett coming up to the microphone and being asked all these questions and legit just repeating, yesterday we made a decision that was deemed to be in the best interest of the Dallas Cowboys. We're standing by that decision. We're going to move on. Deny all that. It's big deal. It looks like, just terrible, terrible, terrible optics for the Dallas Cowboys. And the Jets get another player for their sinking ship that will probably go 2-14 this year or 1-15. Look, and what I saw someone tweet, Lucky Whitehead for the first time in his life doesn't feel so lucky. Terrible. Terrible pun, I know.
The jokes have been absolutely bad on this, and I'm sorry I contributed to it here. But the fact of the matter is Lucky Whitehead is, a decent return man. You could get a reverse every once in a while as a wide receiver for the Cowboys, but really they're not missing him with him gone. That's not a big loss. The dude allegedly stole a Twinkie and he wasn't even in the state. And they did not hesitate to not only release him, but stand by it and say in a press conference that they're moving on. Let's discuss all of the other things going on with the Cowboys in terms of illegal actions. You have Ezekiel Elliott making illegal headlines every single day like it's his off-season job. You have a guy like Randy Gregory you're willing to bring on, a guy like Greg Hardy you're willing to bring on. So let me just get this straight, Jerry Jones. You are perfectly fine with people abusing their girlfriends. Domestic violence is okay. You can look past it. But as soon as you allegedly steal a Twinkie from a different state with a different guy, apparently, that's when you take a stand? No. That is bullshit. And you're lying about it in your press conference. At least be honest that, you know what? We cut him and we didn't have all the details and it's too late to bring him back. I'd rather him say that than say, we take it very seriously. Stealing Twinkies, even when it wasn't you, is not okay. When the fact is, in the past 4 seasons, you have brought on somebody who has been in serious trouble with the law. That is not okay, Jerry Jones. Huge deal.
I love that fire that you're bringing to the subject, and I think that was so well said. And can we just kind of focus in on this one thing here? Lucky Whitehead didn't, I'm not trying to absolve him for what he was apparently accused of, and obviously he was cleared of it. But a Twinkie? Bro, a Twinkie? Are you serious? Oh, come on. That's not something you take seriously. A goddamn Twinkie. Come on. Why would he steal such a thing? Come on. If you hear that, the first thing you shouldn't be thinking, I know I wouldn't be thinking of, the first thing you should be thinking of, are you sure that's him? Why a Twinkie? I mean, there's been weird stories of other things that have just been stolen. I mean, ask Jameis Winston about that. But like a Twinkie? Bro, that's how messed up the NFL is with its priorities, man. That's how messed up the NFL is. You know what? They want to seem as if they're good. They're going to cut a guy who was accused for stealing a Twinkie. Come on!
Joseph Randall a couple years ago was busted for stealing a bottle of cologne, and I don't think they even cut him right away. But a Twinkie apparently is where Jerry Jones and the Cowboys draw the line. That is absolutely not okay.
You can't steal Twinkies.
You didn't even do it. You didn't even
do it.
Oh, man. I mean, you're right. It's not just the Cowboys' problem. It's the entire NFL's problem. With just the whole Colin Kaepernick argument, he doesn't have a job. Other guys do. But the Cowboys are just reinforcing that with this, aren't they? Big time.
You know what's a huge problem for the NFL? People stealing Twinkies. That is a problem that has to be fixed. Roger Goodell tomorrow should step up to the podium and just, you know what? Hey, let's fix this problem. Twinkies. Let's fix this Twinkie problem now. Let's figure this out. Twinkies. We shouldn't have anyone named Lucky or Johnson or anything like that. No one stealing Twinkies. Please don't do it. Please don't do it. This is ridiculous. Let's just move on before we get even more upset.
The NFL is like the New York Knicks of all the professional sports organizations.
No. Here's the thing. The New York Knicks are a terrible organization from top to bottom, and they're not even enjoyable to watch. The NFL is like, they have all these problems. It's like McDonald's. The NFL is exactly like McDonald's. You know it's bad for you. You know there's so many things happening in the background, but damn straight you are going to watch that Week 6 Monday night game between the Houston Texans and the Jacksonville Jaguars because you probably have money on it.
Why you got to bring the Texans into this? But let me just let me expound on this Knicks analogy a little further. The NFL, like the Knicks, continuously does dumb thing after dumb thing. They have idiots in charge. Yet when prime time comes around, they'll always be there no matter what. How's that? Their fans will stick beside them no matter how dumb they get. How's that? That's
fine.
fair.
Okay. All right, fine. Fine, I'll give you that one.
Okay. Moving on to some more NFL news. Julio Jones of the Atlanta Falcons wide receiver, top wide receiver in the league, has hired a diving team, Julian, to fetch a $150,000 earring that he lost while jet skiing. I mean, is that not first world problems? Is that not the definition of first world problems? Big deal or not?
It's ranked up there. I mean, damn, $100,000 for a diamond earring. I mean, I think that thing's as good as gone, man. Look, I get it. People love their jewelry, and it costs a lot of money, and I understand why you want to go out there and get it. But Julio, my dude, it is as good as gone. It is, you know, like that 28-3 lead you had in the Super Bowl. That's how gone it is. It's that gone. Sorry, Julio, you got to move on. Move on. Focus on the upcoming season. Focus on avenging your Super Bowl loss. Come on, man. Julio, focus on that.
I thought the discussion during this NBA offseason was, wow, NFL players aren't getting paid. Well, clearly some of them are, because if he's hiring a team to look for a $100,000 male earring that he lost while on his jet ski, then clearly money is not really an issue here.
Whoa. Come on. It's not exactly like that.
I'm not actually taking a stance because I do think the NFL Players Association needs to get with the program as soon as possible. And that study that was just released, Julian, showed that 99% of retired NFL athletes have CTE, which is a serious issue that they're going to have to address at some point. I don't know why I'm chuckling. It's not funny at all.
Nope. In fact, it's a massive deal. It's a big deal. And, you know, this more or less confirms what I think some people probably assumed from the beginning with CTE. You know, it's something that, you know, it's plaguing a ton of football players, not just NFL players. We've seen players at the younger level be affected with CTE. And, you know, it's something that the NFL is going to have to solve down the road. And this just adds to my McDonald's argument. Not only do you realize it's just bad of a league to follow, it's bad for the players. But still, we're all going to enjoy it and consume it anyway. The NFL is the greatest soap opera that we have in human history, and it is so conflicting to follow it as a fan or even as a general spectator or a media member. But damn it, there's so much money invested in the NFL. It's such a dramatic league, and so many great things happen in that league. We cannot turn away. And unfortunately for some of these guys who are in the league, who I find are vastly underpaid, and the idea of a non-guaranteed anything in the NFL for as hard of a sport as they play is asinine in this day and age. For this to happen is crazy. The CTE thing is scary. It's very scary. I don't like, you know, you hear all these people say, you know what, we can't put our kids into football. Who knows? Maybe this league dies out in a few years.
It's the most dangerous sport, and it's the least guaranteed money. That is just beyond counterintuitive. And yet the NFL is a nonprofit, Julian. They don't pay taxes. That's borderline criminal. They're stealing Twinkies by the billions.
And I'm still kind of laughing at the fact that the NFL is a nonprofit.
You, sir, are abusing your lower third privileges. Let's move on. We have last NFL thing. This is way too much football for a July episode. It won't happen again. Mitch Trubisky, though, enters Bears training camp as third-string quarterback. third string, Julian, after they traded up in an asinine trade to get this guy who I thought they must have really, truly believed in after they spent $15 million on Mike Glennon, who is the first string. But the second string, Julian, that's your boy, Mark Sanchez. Listen to second string. It's the first day of training camp, though. Am I overreacting? Is this a big deal or no deal?
Yeah, it's a massive deal. Sorry, it's not a massive deal that this is happening. I messed that up. I was too busy thinking of old butt fumble as a second string quarterback. Look, Mitch Trubisky, I get it. There were some flags thrown at him. First day of training camp, him not being the outright starter, I'm okay with that. Ease him in and get him to, develop and get himself into the game. And, once preseason hits and he'll get his reps in, we'll really get a good look at him. I'm okay with him not being the number one guy right away. And personally, I mean, maybe this is just crazy talk for, a guy who's not necessarily a Chicago Bears fan. Is it really the end of the world if Mitch Trubisky doesn't start as the number one guy and he ends up being a number two behind Mike Glennon? Is it that wrong? I mean, at this point, I'm just not a fan of starting these rookie quarterbacks that are going to be so-so, and then you throw them in the fire, and then they end up just suffering and losing their confidence. If you have to sit a guy and make him learn behind an NFL veteran for a few games or a year if you have to, even if he was the number 2 overall pick, look, that's an investment. It's a $50 million. You made that trade to trade up all these picks to get a guy. You put in all this money. You're going to put in all this money to get Trubisky. Protect your investment and hone his skills and development. Plus, I mean, you shell out all that money for Mike Glennon anyway. You have 2 investments at quarterback. There's nothing wrong with Glennon being number 1 and Trubisky being number 2. This isn't a big deal.
Yeah, if Trubisky was number 2, it wouldn't be a big deal. Look, it is the first day of training camp. I'm not going to freak out. But if it comes preseason and Mark Sanchez is getting snaps over Mitchell Trubisky, which I don't think will happen, but if it does, that's a huge freaking deal because the Bears are being stupid. If you're going to trade up to the number 2 overall pick from the number 3 overall pick and throw a ton of picks and cash that way and not even give the boy reps in preseason, that's ridiculous. I get you just dropped $15 million on Mike Glennon, which makes the trade even that more questionable, to say the least, to be polite. But this boy better be getting reps with first-teamers in preseason. That's all I'm going to say on it because it is July 26th, after all. We've officially passed the hour mark, Julian. We're actually making better time than usual. Last question of the night. Woo! Nature Boy, 30 for 30, Ric Flair movie on ESPN debuting in November. Are you in or out?
Woo! Let me tell you, man, as a man who's trying to act like Ric Flair for this podcast, I'm trying to get socked up. I'm the real Nature Boy. Woo! This is a big deal. I'll totally be in for that.
You're in?
Yes, absolutely.
I hope our dear friend John Serio is not listening, but there are a number of 30 for 30s that I need to catch up on, and this one is just not that high on my priority list.
Come on.
He's here, but it's it's like all fake, right? It's
well, I mean, I know it's all fake, but it's not even a.
Like, I love Wicked or Hamilton, whatever. I haven't actually seen it, but I'm sure it's good and nice and fun.
Oh, my God.
30 for 30s on it. Come on, man. This is for sports. This is a sports documentary.
John Serial's going to get mad at you. And look, I get it. Look, I'm not even a big wrestling fan myself. I think it's kind of crazy. But you know what? I'll sit through a Ric Flair one. The guy seems like a really cool dude. Plus, even rappers have referenced him and stuff. I guess he's like a bordering cult, at least in America, I would think. He's a cultural icon. Yeah, why not? I'd love to learn a little bit more about Ric Flair, the Nature Boy. Woo! Am I getting it right?
Woo! I think we should stop doing that. Lose any viewer that we have left.
Woo!
The only intrigue I have about the woo is that the Astros have been using it all season because Josh Reddick is a supposed huge WWE fan. He actually has a belt that he gives to his assigned player of the game each game. That I can get on board with. So if I have some time, I may be willing to tune in, but it's not going to take up any DVR space or anything like that. The Astros are my only reason I have any interest in this. But other than that, I'm very much team WWE, not a sport.
It's all for show and for games and all that, you know. Yeah, it's not really a sport. I mean, it's not really real. But I mean, I'll give you this much. I mean, some of the moments they've had have been pretty real. And maybe if they kept Jim Ross as their commentator, I'd watch it. You know, that guy's hilarious.
I will say this: if John Serio is ever the broadcaster, I will sure as hell be tuning in. I can tell you that. We'll have to get on the show and get his thoughts on the 30 for 30 coming out. Julian, it has been a pleasure as always. Any last comments to the dearest fans of ours still tuned?
Wrestling isn't necessarily a sport, but Ric Flair is a badass dude. Twinkies are not a problem. I mean, you shouldn't steal them from stores, but you know, Twinkies should not be so much of a problem where, you know, the NFL needs to drop the hammer. Well, NFL teams need to supposedly drop the hammer just to excuse themselves from dropping a fringe player. And yeah, no, pretty much that's more or less it on this side. Follow me at JKA McKenzie. You can see my Twitter handle on the lower third, which I will continue to abuse my lower third privileges from here on out, Mr. Jake Layton.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that as soon as we go off the air. I'm Jake Lapin. He did it, so I did it, at Jake Lapin _MLB. As you can see on the screen, unless you're listening to us right now on Mixcloud or iTunes, which are very good options. Shout out to Marley Tuskus, who just texted me. You can edit that out in post. Guys, every Wednesday, so much fun. Can't wait till next week. Hopefully we'll get some guests in. Stay tuned because big things are coming for the Face-Off, we promise. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.